Solid. Right on.
Hey man, what's your name?
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Calvin. It's your kind of day already, man. The sun is shining.
Yeah, and it's Friday.
Oh,
Looking forward to
there
the
you go.
weekend.
Friday's his kind of day.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah.
So every day would be like a holiday for you, Calvin, as long as it's Friday, right?
Well, yeah, but Friday implies that there's 2 days off of work.
Hey, Cal, you've just started your working career. You can't. Come on.
Oh, I know, but everyone's got to recuperate a little bit.
I said he's 24 years old and he's talking about
Recuperating. That's well, maybe in some ways I can remember being 24 as being the time sometimes when I did need to recuperate.
you and I both. Let's see, at 24 years old, I was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, Calvin, in a factory.
I'm lucky that I don't have to do that. But you were probably making a little bit more money.
This is like that Johnny Carson bit where he talked about how he had to walk uphill to school both ways.
Yeah. It is a different time. It's Friday. It means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. How you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing all right. I walked uphill. I'm going to walk uphill home.
24 years old.
Huh. I can remember that. Baby.
Yeah. 24 years old. Anyway, Calvin, that's, man, you got it made, man. I mean,
I'm definitely trying. I am 25, not 24, but
Sandy,
it's not that big a difference.
I stand corrected.
Well, it's a
When
bigger
did you
percentage.
turn-
That's a 4%, 5% mistake. At your age, at my age, it's just a rounding, just a rounding error.
So when did you become 25?
The end of October.
Oh, okay, all right. You're heading. Let's see.
I'm halfway to 26.
He's halfway to 26.
Yeah. Well, once he reaches 26, he's headed downhill. It's all downhill.
So, actually,
25.
when I was young, 26 was an important age because it was the end of the eligibility for the draft.
Oh,
People used
really?
to. Yeah,
You were too old.
After 26, you were too old and without a state of national emergency.
Well, and probably the reason that they cut it off at 26 is, hey, we can't totally control.
Yeah. We can't. Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, they have found that, younger people can be trained in a way to essentially lose themselves in the situation that they're going to be put.
It's why they take them at 18.
Yeah, well,
because they're a clean slate, and this is not to disparage 18-year-olds. Sandy, I think you and I used to be 18, right?
I think so. Sometimes I think I still am, but I'm reminded quickly.
and so they take 18-year-olds and bring them into the military, because I remember I was talking with a colonel once, and the colonel said, well, we take 18-year-olds because 18-year-olds haven't yet determined what they want to do and all those kinds of things. And
what we're saying here, what we're saying about our draft is interesting, because in Ukraine right now, they're having a bout in their legislature about reducing the draft age. Their draft age starts at age 26. So it starts where we ended. They don't take young people. I think the same is true in Russia, actually. But I think it's because they don't want to create the resistance that would occur from young people, and they have they try to operate with more volunteers.
So anyway, got a lot to talk about as always, and so stick with us, guys. Sandy, you picked the music today. Let's talk about why.
Yeah, well, I picked, you'll see with the bumper music, but it's all theme songs from TV shows from yesteryear. And the reason I did is I was looking for something that used to knit us all together. And the fact is that back before the days of streaming and back before the days of news shows that people identified with politically, we all used to listen and watch the same stuff on TV. And we knew at Tuesday night at 8:30, America was watching I Love Lucy. We were watching it together. When the news came on, we were watching Walter Cronkite. We were all watching Dan Rather. We were watching the Muppets. Our kids were watching the Muppets. And we all understood and were knit together by that experience. And I fear that one of the things that we've lost with the current uh, buffet of choices. I mean, today, what we watch is totally up to each one of us individually. We can watch anything we want on demand. Doesn't have to be current. Back in those days, this was before recordings. You when you watched something on TV, it was
That
live.
was it.
If you didn't watch it at 8:30, you didn't see I Love Lucy. You couldn't watch it Wednesday morning later. And so, today we've just lost that notion that here we all are watching something together. The only time it happens is like the Super Bowl. We have some occasional things that knit us all together, and I think it does knit us together.
So I remember Wednesday nights, Bonanza,
Yep.
Gunsmoke, the Big Valley. You don't remember any of those
Oh,
things?
absolutely. But Bonanza was on Sunday night.
Oh, Sunday nights. So
just to correct you on that story. That was, yeah, and you know what? They advertised Reynolds Wrap, which was quilted.
you know, those were the days, my friends. We thought they'd never end.
Yeah.
We sing and dance forever, and
yeah. But
those
I mean,
were the nights we choose.
But
We
to be
thought
honest,
we'd never lose.
I really think that shared experience is important to Americans and for us to all have a sense of community with one another. And I think if we had more, it's one of the reasons why the Packers are good for Wisconsin. Doesn't matter if you're a liberal or a conservative, you back the Packers. And when you're at a football game, sitting next to whomever you're sitting next to, you don't try and figure out who they voted for. You're jawing with each other about the game and experiencing something together.
Sandy, you're absolutely correct. Because if Democrats and Republicans existed back then. There were Democrats, there were Republicans, and so people were still able to not have the issues that we're dealing with today, disliking one another because of their political affiliations. And I was telling you, yesterday, before we came in, that I watched a couple movies from the '40s last night. That's what I do, man. Right? '40s and '50s. If it's the '60s, it might be a little bit too new. But man,
you like to watch Three Coins in a Fountain.
Hey, man, it's great. So last night I was watching this movie, and only Sandy, well, maybe a couple other people in the audience might remember this woman's name, Mamie Van Doren.
Oh, absolutely.
She's still around.
Honest to God.
She's 93.
Wow. Yeah. Mamie Van Doren was there with Jane Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe and Mamie Van Doren. They were some of the bombshells of the 50s.
She's 93 years old. Now, it tells you something. I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, Mamie Van Doren. I wonder if she's still around. I Google it. Yes, Mamie Van Doren is still around. And she's in this movie, and a lot of the old characters. I watched one last night with Broderick Crawford. He used to be on.
He was on a TV show.
Yeah,
and he was He was sort of this clumsy, sort of overweight. Kind of a detective.
Yeah, that's the. I'm trying to think of. What was the highway? No, it wasn't highway.
It wasn't
patrol.
Highway Patrol, but I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Was it the Highwaymen? No,
I forgot what it was. 844-967-2789. If you remember the show that Broderick Crawford used to be on, and his voice is so distinctive, right?
Yeah. But the thing about Broderick Crawford is he used to have to chase after a criminal every once in a while, and it was pretty clear that guy would never be able to. If it wasn't a movie, he'd never be able to catch anyone on the run.
I don't know, Sandy, if if long after you and I are gone, people will be having conversations about these times and the things that you know that they are dealing with in their lives today, and trying and reminiscing
Well,
like you and
I
I.
think reminiscing is something everyone does, but they might have less in common to reminisce about. I think one of the things that happened during the 50s with TV and before that with the radio, everyone listened to The Shadow and had these radio shows. And then they had the TV shows. And in Milwaukee, we started out with one TV station. When we finally had diversity, we had three
Yeah,
TV stations. And then ultimately UHF snuck in
yeah.
there. And then I think we had five. But we were all watching the same stuff, and it was all happening simultaneously. Either you watched it when it was on TV or you didn't see it.
So I'll never forget when UHF came in and uh, Batman was on UHF.
Yeah, and the UHF
Well,
thing, you had
it
to
was
put a
snowing.
box up
Yep.
on top of your TV, and it was never the reception was never quite. It was like watching something that was being televised and sent to you from London or
Yeah.
something. It wasn't
and
good.
and it was, we didn't have color TV until, I never will forget, probably 1972.
Yeah, late '60s, early '70s.
I
Yeah.
I bought I bought my mother a 27-inch
Ooh, that was a big one.
yeah, a
Hey, you were living
color
high.
television.
You had a Buick Riviera and
Yeah.
a 27-inch color
I was
TV.
I was 19 years old,
Living large.
and I was making a truckload of money. And at the time, that I was talking about this on yesterday, Sandy, unions and the impact that unions had. And in 1954, 35% of Americans were in unions.
Well, I think the difference, when a union, when you were working, when you were a young person, you stepped into union scale, and the scale didn't go up that much with your tenure,
No,
but you stepped right
at the
into
top.
the top, nearly
Yeah,
the top pay. So, when you were 25, it was great. When you were 55, it wasn't as great if you had
that's
kids, but
that's right. But the fact that today only 6% of private workers are in unions,
yeah.
and I think, Sandy, part of why people are struggling is the loss of that union.
Well, the union allowed one worker to have a family and middle class, and we don't have that anymore.
All right, 844-967-2789. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. Got a lot to talk about.
Hello, Wisconsin.
Oh,
That's from the '70s show. I didn't actually watch that show, but I had to play it because it has that line at the end. It turns out that all these throwback to the '50s shows that were on TV somehow decided to stage themselves as if they were in Wisconsin. So Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and
cheat sheet.
the '70s.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host, Sandy Williams. And so, Sandy, when Truth Social was going to go public, you said it's not going to end well for investors.
Right.
You basically said that on the air.
Well, yeah, because it went. So what happened was the special purpose.
Let me set this up quickly.
Yeah.
Trump's critics love to see Truth Social stock price crash. He can still cash out big. The stock has crashed as you projected.
Well, what happened was, so the Special Purpose Acquisition Corp was on the New York Stock Exchange or whatever exchange it's on. And it was basically set up and announcing to its investors that, look, we don't have a business yet. We're going to buy a profitable business and it'll be in the space. And so people bought the SPAC, invested money in it. The SPAC then merged with Donald J. Trump's Truth Social. It's DJT is the initials for the corporation, interesting enough, Donald J. Trump. And so it merged with it. And immediately then it was on the exchange because the new merged company was on the exchange already before the merger. And so 2 days after that happened, Truth Social released its financials that were audited. And the audited financials revealed that they had a total of like $4.5 million of revenue the prior year and $56 million of losses. Now, $4.5 million of revenue for a year for something like Truth Social, a digit, it's not just peanuts; it's peanut shells. and so there wasn't, unless there's some hope of immense rapid growth in terms of on the revenue side, this thing is valueless. And so the immediate enthusiasm for the stock, it came out at 56, went up to 79. It's in the 20s now. Okay. And it's going down because at some point it's relying on people to buy it who are tough-minded investors who are looking at it to try and figure out what it could be worth, in fact. And it doesn't have much value. But Donald Trump set this thing up. He didn't put any money into it. He talked a couple of people into organizing it on his behalf. It got organized. Now he's suing those two people to get them out of the business and to remove their shares of stock. So whatever profits there might be left for the original organizers, it'll be his. It won't even be related to or realized by the people who actually did the legwork on this thing. Because I guarantee you, Donald Trump didn't do any legwork setting this up. And so, just like everything else, investors are going to lose their shirts. With Trump University, all the students lost their shirts.
Trump steaks.
I mean, it's a long series of things that have gone a cropper, but he walks away with some original organizing money. Now, in this case, he's only going to get money if whatever the stock is worth after his waiting period to sell the stock. So we'll see how much that is.
Well, they talked about the possibility early on of him getting $3 billion. Well,
$3 billion was
out of this.
$3 billion was his percentage of the value of the business when the stock was selling way up there at 76.
So let me ask you this then, Sandy. Could it be possible that Donald Trump did not know that these things were going to happen the way they happened, and people were going to wind up losing money? I'm just from the devil's advocate side of this.
Did he not know it was going to happen? I think he was totally indifferent about whether it would happen because he was only focused on what could happen for Donald Trump. I mean, he'd have to be empty-headed about business not to understand that a business that has $4.5 million of revenues and $56 million of losses, and it's basically a software business. It's a portal that doesn't have much in the way of expenses. Doesn't have any value. But he has a view that the Trump name has so much value that I think he thinks he's bestowing upon people an opportunity if they want to be able to share in the name Trump, which could segue us to what he's doing to people who are running for office and using his name.
You know, the amazing thing about all of it, Sandy, 844-967-2789, is that people knew this going in, that they were going to be taken, right? They knew they were going to be taken, and that yet they did it anyway.
Barnum and Bailey, suckers born every minute.
And I don't think people even care about the fact that they lost this money. I mean, it's because to them they were helping Donald Trump.
Well, I don't know I don't know
Well,
what
I mean,
I don't
do
know
you
what the
possibly
profile
think
of the
that?
investors are, but the original enthusiasm for the stock had to be people who were swept up with the concept that Donald Trump is Midas, and the Midas touch was going to make this valuable. And it turns out that there isn't a King Midas, and there never was one.
Sandy, I don't know. And so I can only guess is that I thought that most people who supported it thought they were helping Donald Trump out. He was being attacked and he needed some financial support. And so they bought the stock in believing that by doing so, they were rescuing Donald Trump from all of the, you know, bills that he has incurred.
Yeah. Well, the
And
fact is, the original stock that was bought, it wasn't that money doesn't flow to Donald Trump. The only way Donald Trump gets money out of this is by the value of the stock that he has in the enterprise, this DJT stock. And so, if the stock becomes valueless, Donald Trump won't walk away with a fortune. He undoubtedly got some cash out of this thing by providing his name. I haven't seen the details of it, but knowing Donald Trump, he probably got the SPAC to give him some cash for the ability to use the Donald J. Trump name.
so Sandy, so True Social, nobody else writes anything on True Social other than Donald Trump.
Well, apparently people don't watch it. There isn't a lot of advertising going because the revenue they would earn would be the advertising revenue. It's $4.5 million. Presumably that $4.5 million is infected by people who think they're helping Donald Trump. So, but that probably isn't savvy money either.
Yeah. So, True Social stock price crashes. Sandy predicted it.
Well, there's a term called Schadenfreude. It's a
German
term, and the term means that you take pleasure out of other people's suffering. Okay, there's a little bit of Schadenfreude going on about the collapse of that stock.
All right. Welcome back. 844-967-2789 is Friday. It means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Donald Trump.
week, your month, or even your year, but I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you.
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. Sandy, what is that?
Which one was that, Calvin? Is that Happy Days?
No, that's the theme from Friends.
Oh, Friends. That's right.
Yeah, no, it can,
Friends. Yeah.
Happy Days, I remember.
Yeah.
And so why are we playing these themes?
Well, it's just stuff we all watch.
For people who are just joining us?
It's the stuff that knit us all together because we all sat at the same time. It wasn't recorded. Same time, same day, sat and watched it. We all knew we did. We'd get to work the next day and talk about what happened. Yeah.
No question. Let's go to the phone lines. And Tom from LA. Hey, good morning to you, Tom. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Good morning, Earl. Good morning, Sandy. First off, we the people ultimately are the government, and we must never forget that. Get registered to vote and get ready for the next election. Second, I think we can say, and I want to be really factual here, but the previous occupant of the White House, correct me if I'm right or wrong here, but is a rapist and also is the worst business person on the planet. He has bankrupted a casino, for God's sakes. And I think we need to start saying that every single day, that he is the worst businessman ever on the planet because he screws everything up so bad. And the listening audience, if they disagree with me, call in, because I'll tell you what, he screws up everything. And he is factually a rapist because of the court case they already went through. Also, Sandy, thank you so much for playing the music, because of the fact that it culturally did bring us all together at one time where people all had something in common. Now everything is so segmented that we really don't have anything besides maybe the Super Bowl or things like that we all have in common that we can watch because of the new streaming services that are out there. So thanks for bringing that up as well, that culturally we don't really have that anymore.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. Sandy,
but we do have, we do share things in common still, and we ought to be more alert to it. We all have children. And when we get older, we have grandchildren. And we could all be highly focused on the shared experience of parenthood and making sure that all our children have a chance.
You know, Sandy, that is absolutely correct. And I don't understand why we can see it so differently when we know at the root of all of this is a future that is not yours and mine anymore, but that should be predicated on preparing, the young people and preparing the world for them.
Yeah.
Like our parents prepared for us. Let's go to Mike from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Mike. How you doing, man? Thank you very much for the call. Your thoughts?
Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. What a beautiful day a good way to end a work week.
Yes, sir.
Hey, in this Donald Trump conversation, me personally and many of the people in my circle, we're done with this. We've coddled this guy and we've coddled MAGA for way, way, way too long. How do we coddle insurrectionists or people that support insurrection? How do we allow them so much space? And gosh, we're 3.5 years after January 6th, and yet we, the people, are still pulling at straws, trying to, get down to the full investigation. All this should be done by now. This should have been done years ago, but we're still paying a steep price. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I think a lot of us are beginning to get this fatigue. Enough of this nonsense. It's time to aggressively handle these people like they've been trying to do to us, in the way that they're treating our Constitution, the way they're treating our norms, much less each other. The way enough is this coddling. These guys in this whole movement needs to be called out for what they are, and they have nothing. Last thing, my point very quickly: this Project 2025 that the conservatives are promoting heavily if the people would just take a look at that and then kind of analyze it for themselves and try to say, okay, U.S. Constitution over here, Project 2025, it doesn't fit. So again, enough coddling. Let's call these guys out for what they are, enemies of America, and they need to be dealt with accordingly.
Mike, you aren't alone in that assessment. There are many who will disagree with you because, they believe that you can possibly turn these people around. So, Sandy, your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the most important things that Mike mentioned was norms. I think that America's society and our government is premised on people operating within norms, within a normal range of conduct. Our laws are written with the notion of norms, and we can't have statutes that speak to every single kind of criminal conduct, particularly the ones that are unimagined. So, we didn't have a statute that would deal explicitly with the January 6th situation where someone is trying to interrupt a government process for naming the president of the United States. And so it gets very hard to have a democratic process, a rule of law, if you have a bunch of people who have decided that they want to operate completely outside the norms. They want to test the edge of every envelope in terms of norms. And we're living through that now. It's a very difficult process because our society is not premised on everything being adjudicated. It's premised on very few things needing to be adjudicated because people are living within norms. And unfortunately, Donald Trump's premise for life is, I'm going to live on the edge. I'm going to let the courts decide. I can slow courts down. I can deal with courts. I don't think there's many people alive ever who have been involved in thousands of lawsuits. Donald Trump has.
Let's go to Gary from Sussex. Good morning to you, Gary. You say what?
Hi. Hey, I got Tom from LA said that if anybody refutes what he had to say today, the call up. So, yeah, I'm calling up. First of all, Donald Trump is not a convicted rapist. And he's not the worst business owner in the world. He's made more money than me, so he's better than me. So I'd have to be lower than him. So.
Well,
okay, well,
no kidding.
Yeah, well, Gary, let's go through that. It's true. He's not a convicted rapist. He wasn't convicted in a criminal court. He was in a civil court, however, found to have been more likely than not to have sexually assaulted a woman, Jean Carroll. So I don't know what that's dispositive of, but at least a jury had decided that it was more likely than not that he had. On the business side, you understand that Donald Trump inherited something like $450 million from his father, and he inherited it in the many decades ago. And if you simply put that $450 million into a Standard and Poor's 500 fund, he'd have more money today than he has. Okay, so it's not like this is an entrepreneur who's made something out of nothing. He was given a great deal of money, and the fact is that his track record on businesses isn't very good. So, I am troubled because there are people all around the world and in America who say Donald Trump's a smart businessman, he's a deal maker, and that's a reason we should elect him president. I think the evidence is that he's neither a smart businessman nor a good deal maker, and so that isn't a reason that we should elect him president. He has made a bunch of money, but it's all been premised on branding, and it's basically money that's been made at the expense of others.
Gary?
Then maybe I'd been a better businessman because I never inherited anything, and I have a really good business.
So Gary, but
So,
you, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you
So you
can't
are. I think
compare-
you are a better businessman.
Yeah, but to compare your situation with Donald Trump, I mean, we're talking about apples and oranges. You need to compare Donald Trump with the big guys and what he's done compared to the big guys, Gary.
Well, I think Gary came to just the right conclusion. I think that someone who's made a business out of nothing has done far more than Donald Trump, whose who pretended to be. If you read the story about how he was behaving before he inherited the money, in which he drove a New York Times reporter around the city and pointed at buildings that were my building. This is my building. He developed a reputation for wealth that helped him garner attention and wealth.
But you can't at the same time give the accolades to Donald Trump from being a great businessman. And we just got through talking about the people who are he's left in the wake on Truth Social.
Right.
The average Joe who believes in him, and he just intentionally took advantage of those people. That's kind of his MO. That's what it's always been with him. And so when we talk about this great businessman, well, if you leave bodies in the wake, how great a business person are you, Gary?
Yeah, well, here, I just want to make one other point before I leave. Mike, that was just on the air, basically said that MAGA people are enemies of the state. Now, the thing is, I think I'm a little bit more normal than what's going on today. I mean, what's going on with Palestinians and what's going on with all the stuff that's going on down by Columbia University and stuff like that. I mean, I'm an American. I love America. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. But the far left, and I'm not talking about you guys, but I'm talking about the extreme far left. They've gone so far. They are, as far as I'm concerned, they're the enemies of the state.
Well,
Death
see,
to America.
well,
death
see,
to
Gary,
the
see,
Jews.
Gary, see, you can't on the one hand say people are pointing their finger at those of us on the right, and then you turn around and say, well, we're not that, but those people on the left. I mean, come on, man.
Well, I think the problem we have in politics is that both sides have decided that the other side is a danger to America. Okay, it's not that they represent policies that we would rather not have instituted in our country, but rather the other side is a danger to America. And when you have that kind of a view of somebody, it justifies very extreme actions with respect to protecting America. Right? It's almost protecting the country against treasonous behavior. These are people who want to undermine America. These are people who are not patriots, and we're gonna take care of them. And I didn't think that Mike did the right thing by describing the right as that, and I don't think the right does the right thing by describing the left as that, because as soon as we paint ourselves into that position, we actually do have civil war. That is the premise of civil war.
Gary, you got the last.
Okay, well, I love listening to you guys. I agree with a lot of the stuff that you guys say. And, if you and I and Sandy could sit together and make a plan, I think the world would be a lot better, because I don't have a lot of faith in what's going on. And to me, it's sad. But I'll say one thing. You guys on the far left sit there and rip Donald Trump. Why don't you sit there and just tell us how good Biden is? Because you guys, you just
Hey, Gary.
That's your
Hey,
defense.
Gary.
is
Let
ripping on-
me say this. So when we come back, Trump demands a cut of donations from campaigns that use his name. You say we're ripping him, but when he does things like this, man, what are you talking about, man? Trump demands a cut of donations from campaigns that use his name. These are Republicans that are running for office that he demands to get a cut on. Sounds a bit deplorable to me, Gary. 844-967-2789. Guys, hang on the phone lines. We'll come to you. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host, Sandy Williams. All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. It's Friday. That means Friday is my co-host, Sandy Williams. And Sandy, we're playing this music because...
Well, these are shows we all watch. This was stuff we did together. This was back when America had the unifying thread of shared experience just about every night on TV. They watched the same shows.
I don't even know how you could possibly play the Jeffersons and leave out All in the Family.
Well, that's true.
And All in the Family.
And I think All in the Family was right before the Jeffersons.
Yeah.
All in the Family and then the Jeffersons.
It was one of my favorite shows ever. Let's go to the phone lines and Bill from Oconomowoc. Hey, good morning to you, Bill. Thank you for the call. You say what?
I'm going to kind of continue the conversation you were on. I listened to Charlie Barrett and said, boy, does he have some great comments. He said he never realized that after 2020, lying would be a prerequisite for running for president. And then he said, they all lie, and some lie more than others. But he said one lies more than all. And I loved his comment. He was trying to point out how bad and how disgusting our political system is that we have to give a microphone to a felon. I'm going to ask you guys a question. I like to read polls, but I read polls that, how should I say, the general media, they don't always want to show these polls. Well, the poll I was reading, and I think it was by Gallup, I could be wrong, 70% of Americans think Trump should be tried for his crimes. If that's the case, then Biden's going to walk away with it. And for Gary, we haven't had a president like Biden in a long time. I know Fox tells you how much you're suffering, but you just told us your business is successful. Well, how could it grow successful in a climate if Biden is so bad? Biden has done so much for education. He's trying to put back together what Scott Walker ripped apart. I would love to debate you, Gary, on those issues in a friendly way, in a nice, respectful way, because I think Biden's one of the best presidents we've had.
Hey, Bill, well said, Bill. Thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Julie from Franklin. Good morning to you, Julie. You say what?
Good morning. I told you guys I like to listen to you because I want to get the other side point of view and educate myself on things maybe I don't know.
And we're thankful, and we're thankful that you do that. We appreciate that.
Oh, okay. Tom in LA seems to think he knows me better than I do, and I need to educate myself. But I said this to you guys before. I agreed with Gary. Tell me what's good about Biden. Don't talk. I don't know why you guys talk about Trump so much. That's one of the reasons I listen, because I don't want to hear about Trump. I already know I voted for him. I want to hear why I should vote for Biden.
So let me say this, Julie, before Sandy chimes in. I constantly try, and that Sandy knows, we talk about not wanting to talk about Trump all the time. But you go to any newspaper, and I don't care whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, I don't care if it's the Wall Street Journal, I don't care if it's the LA Times, I don't care if it's the Miami Herald, I don't care what it is. Donald Trump is on all of it because Donald Trump wants the attention. And so you can't not talk about the fact that, as Bill stated, here's a man running for president that has 91 felony charges. You can't not talk about the fact that here's a man who's running for president of the United States. And to be as, magnetic as Donald Trump is, that's what he wants. He wants that attention. Sandy, you can respond.
Well, I think the problem is that singing someone's praises is not something that ends up happening a great deal The news is almost by nature something that focuses on negatives. It focuses on unusual events. Okay, but I think Biden has accomplished a bunch, and I think what one has to look at the administrations through the lens of children and grandchildren, and through the lens of middle class America and the 50% of Americans who live at or below the median income. Okay, and if you look at what administrations promise for that bunch of people, the young and middle class, the median family in America, and those who live below the median, which is 50% of the families in America, those people are up against it financially. They need help with child daycare. They need help with education. They need help with affordable and accessible health care. Uh, they need some government programs that are necessary, because the only place to turn for some of these things is actually government programs. And who is it, and which administration is it that's focusing on those and trying to address those? And it is the Biden administration. And Obama focused on healthcare, but he spent all of his political chips on it. He only had 2 years in which he could accomplish anything, and after that, he was facing an uphill battle with Congress in his way the entire time. Uh, Biden has accomplished quite a bit in 4 years, and you can look at the things that have been implemented: bipartisan bill, the infrastructure bill. People want to focus on inflation, but people should analyze the world experience with inflation to understand America's experience with inflation. And just like you can't give Biden credit for all the good things in our economy, you also can't give him blame for the things that are the downsides. And the two things that will be talked about are inflation and oil prices. Both of them are world phenomena.
Julie?
Well, back to you, Earl, with, Trump's on every media outlet. He's every story that's out there. It kind of proves my point. We get enough Trump. We know all that. Why are we giving Trump what he wants? Talk about some issues.
Well, we're actually
We're with you.
We're
Yeah.
with you on all that. Yeah, absolutely. And to the extent that we don't do that, I guess it's a struggle.
Hey, Julie, thank you very much for the call. All of you hang on the phone lines, 844-967-2789. It's Friday. It means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you.
Shame about it. On under a bad side of blue moon in your eyes. Woke up this morning. You got yourself a gun.
sunshine, goodbye rain. She's wearing my school ring on her chain. She's my steady, I'm her man. I'm gonna love her all I can.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams. And Sandy, you brought in the music. Why?
Yeah, because it's the stuff that knit us together. That one, Happy Days, is particularly a keenly interest of people from Milwaukee and Wisconsin, because the show was about Milwaukee, but it was stuff that all of America watched at the same time.
All right, let's bring this text in before we go to the phone lines. Trump threatened to suspend the Constitution and Bill of Rights. The one thing that separates us from the banana republic, and this is Steve, he also puts Russia's interests over the United States' interests and wants to weaken NATO. He admires other dictators. This next election is far from a normal election. Two choices, the choices between authoritarianism versus democracy and the rule of law. And so, if you're just joining us, we've had a pretty robust conversation before we had the break about Donald Trump and some of the things that were going on, and had some really great callers. We're going to continue the conversation with the people who are on the line now. Let's go to Lynn from Oconomowoc. Lynn, thank you very much. You say what?
And thank you, Earl, for taking my call. For Julie, I just have two things to say to her. First, can you live without Social Security? Maybe you can. The second thing is Medicare. It was started in 1965, and I remember when my grandmother was so thankful for having Medicare so she could go to the doctors. And if you have no pre-existing diseases, like you don't have arthritis, maybe you don't need Medicare, Julie. But for Julie and all the other Republicans, if you need Medicare and Social Security, back Biden. Thank you.
Hey, Lynn, thank you very much for the call. Let's go back to Mike from Kenosha. Mike, you say what?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call and giving me an opportunity. And I love it, by the way, and I love to exchange good thoughts and good conversation with all people. But Steve's text kind of touched on my point. We are in a unique time. The reason why many of us are aggressive against Trump when we have the opportunity is because in our minds, he deserves it. He is the only candidate that has run for office that has talked about suspension of the U.S. Constitution. That's all you need to, the further you need to go with me, right? The prerequisite for every single public service job that I know of is you have to take an oath to the Constitution. And we've seen time and time again that they just don't recognize it. There's plenty of things that the Democrats have gotten wrong. My specific problem back in the 90s was I was against global initiative and WTO and NAFTA. And that was Clinton's deal, right?
Right.
So as a true independent, I'm just calling a duck here. We're seeing a very unique candidate. I've never seen anything like this in my 65 years on this earth. And my last thing is, when you hear the testimony of others, when you hear the opinions of others like General Kelly and Rex Tillerson and Michael Cohen, who spent time, he went to jail for exactly what Trump is going on trial for right now, right? So it's a unique time. Unfortunately, we have to deal with this. And unfortunately, Donald Trump, who is a camera hawk, there's not a camera or the attention, that he just loves this stuff. It's a unique time, and we just have to deal with it accordingly.
Hey, Mike.
Last thing real quick is equal justice. If Michael Cohen has to do the time for the crime, why doesn't Trump? Trump needs that.
Well said, Mike. You want to respond, Sandy? Okay, let's go back to Julie. Hey, Julie. Okay, you say what?
Well, once again, the Republicans don't want to do away with Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare. We all need that. The only way to sustain it is through taxes. We all pay into it. When 47% of the country does not pay any taxes, it's going to suffer. Somebody has to pay for it. We can't just keep printing money. People don't, this is what bothers, I don't know if every Republican, but it's, the country does have to function. The government does have to run like a business in a lot of ways, and stop wasting money and put it where we need it. And no, I would like to know the facts on how Republicans don't need or want Social Security. That I would like to know that.
So hang on, Julie. Let's let Sandy respond.
So, Julie, let me just ask you a couple of questions. You recited a fact. You said 47% of Americans don't pay taxes. First of all, I don't think that's accurate. Number one. Number two, if they don't pay taxes, it's because they don't make money, or they don't pay taxes because they make so much money that they're able to skirt around the tax laws. Do you think that the median family in America is not paying enough taxes?
Nope.
Okay.
Not what I
Do you
said.
think the people who earn less money than the median family in America pays too few taxes?
Nope.
Okay. Well, that's right now we've dealt with 50% of Americans, because 50% of Americans live at or below the median income in America. So the recitation of a fact, which I'm not sure is accurate, that 47% of Americans aren't paying taxes, doesn't make sense. No, and two, if we're going to run the country like a business, should we also be dealing with the revenue side? Should we be cutting down the amount of revenue we take into our coffers while at the same time we're experiencing deficits?
Well, that's a good question, but what the tax thing that you 47% is accurate.
Well, 47% don't pay what? They don't
I
pay
don't know how
FICA.
to fix it.
Do they not pay FICA taxes, or what taxes are 47% of the Americans not Americans?
They don't pay federal taxes.
Okay.
Or not? They don't pay federal taxes.
Okay, but
so
then
why can't we come? This is a problem that. Here's why I call in. All of these topics that we talk about, I truly believe 95% of us could meet in the middle and agree on almost everything, come up with solutions where we both compromise and meet in the middle. But I don't know why it's so hard to do that.
Hey, Julie, I think Sandy, Julie, I think it's because we talk about things that apparently people believe are facts, and sometimes what they're hearing and saying are facts aren't in fact facts. And then the other thing is, Sandy mentioned, and when you talked about revenue, and clearly the problem with the lack of revenue continues to be the wealthy not paying their fair share. That's the point Sandy was alluding to. That's part of the fix. That's an easy part of the fix, but we can't seem to get that done. Sandy?
But I do agree that if we were able to talk facts, and we just sat and talked about and understood problems and then talked about solutions, that yes, a substantial part of America could sit at the table and we could probably reach agreement. And the problem is we don't. I mean, I think it is an exaggeration to say that Republicans want to do away with Social Security. That isn't something they talk about. They do talk about tinkering with it, and they do talk about reducing eligibility for it in some manner. But, we also have to talk about revenue. We have to talk about increasing revenue where we need to increase revenue. And we need to talk about the tax burden. We need to talk about the architecture of our economy. The fact that the median family in America earns $74,000 a year and lives paycheck to paycheck isn't conducive to talking about increasing the tax burden that they pay. the fact is that the average tax burden of that family is over $14,000 a year.
So let's go to Tim from Eau Claire. Hey, good morning to you, Tim. Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
Yeah, thanks for taking the call.
Thank you for
Well, I
calling.
guess I don't understand where Julie's coming from here. She says they don't want to get rid of Social Security. Representative Mike Lee is on tape and video saying that he wants to eliminate Social Security. So I guess maybe she's not watching the right programs. That's all I got to say.
Thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Rita from La Crosse. Good morning to you, Rita. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for
I
listening.
have a comment. I'd like to know why we work all our lives, we get a pension, Social Security, and they're still taxing us when we're retired. That doesn't seem to be right either, that they tax our Social Security and our pensions.
Well, I'm with you. I'm one of those people, who's getting his pension tax as well as Social Security. But as Sandy stated, Sandy, you said again, revenue.
Well,
They
yeah,
need the revenue.
yeah. I mean, we need to address the revenue side. We need to figure out the fair way to tax ourselves, so that we have a sustainable budget that meets the needs of Tom, Dick, and Mary, and Tom, Dick, and Mary when they're young, and Tom, Dick, and Mary when they're old, and Tom, Dick, and Mary when they're sick. All of those things need to be addressed. And I fear that we don't spend enough time looking at things through that vantage point. An earlier caller, I said, well, what you have to do is decide what vantage point, whose eyes you're going to look at the public policy through. And when you decide that helps you understand maybe where you want to go politically.
Well, Rita's position again was don't do it on those of us who can at least afford to do it, our pensions and our Social Security. 844-967-2789. Hang on the phone lines. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show. It's Friday. That means Fridays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you.
Sunny day, sweeping out clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to St.
All right. I think we know what that one is. Welcome back to a Friday edition of the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us. That's in them. Sandy, why are we playing these for people who are just joining us?
Well, just because it's the stuff that caused us all to have a similar experience and to understand we were all in the same boat together, and we enjoyed it. We all watched these things at the same time in unity.
You know what began our conversation that's been ongoing, and the phone lines are completely packed, is a conversation, Sandy, that you and I were having, for those who are just joining us, about, we talked a little bit about Donald Trump. We talked, and and so, you know, we didn't even get to the second part of the story that we wanted to talk about with Donald Trump. And this was about Donald Trump and his Truth Social. And so what it does show as the phone lines are packed again is the differences that people have uh, on one side and the other. And we're fortunate to have both sides having this conversation on our airways. Let's go right back to the phone lines and let's go to Tom from West Dallas. Good morning to you, Tom. You say what, sir?
Good morning. The lady who was just on before was talking about Social Security and everyone being taxed and everything. Well, we're at record unemployment. Therefore, everyone is paying into FICA tax. Everyone is paying into Social Security now. Why don't we discuss why Congress has pilfered, borrowed, whatever, $2.9 trillion, this is a simple Google search because that's what I just did, from Social Security. They also, the Republicans, talk about privatizing Social Security and investing it in like the stock market. Well, just imagine if we would have just all invested into True Social right now. Where would your money be? You know, it's like, it's not that hard, people. Social Security is something we all pay into. Congress took money from it, $2.9 trillion. That has to be replaced. We would not be anywhere near this mess. Also, Ron Johnson also came right out and said that we need to either get rid of Social Security or severely reduce it, which people are just barely getting by now on Social Security who have to rely on it, who don't have pensions. That is their pension. And that's about what I would like to say.
Well,
about
thank you
that.
very
Also,
much.
I'd like to talk about.
Oh, go ahead.
Go on. Sorry.
No,
Thank you.
okay.
Oh, I was going to say, I just wanted to laugh about Trump in trial there, and that his lawyers had to give him a picture book to buy his time while he's sitting there.
Hey, come on, man. Let's go to where are we at? Is it Doug from Madison? Let's go to Doug from Madison. Good morning to you, Doug. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Hey, good morning, and thanks for taking my call. So I just kind of wanted to put a finer point on the whole Social Security and Medicare issue and, you know, taxation. And, you know, you talked to the previous caller mentioned, you know, that everybody's paying into it. And that's pretty much the case. I mean, everybody who is an employee pays into pays for Medicare and Social Security at a percentage of their income, regardless of what their income is. So, you know, for Julie to say that 47% aren't paying federal taxes, well, you know, last I checked, Social Security and Medicare are federal taxes, and every employee is paying into that. So, anyway, I just again wanted to put a finer point on that, and also point out that the people that aren't paying at the same rate are those that are making, I'm not sure what the current level is right now, but something like 150,000 and above are not paying into Social Security. So
yeah, I was going to point that out, that once you reach a threshold, you don't pay any FICA tax on income above that threshold level. And I don't know what that number is now. I
thought it was 140 some thousand, but you're close. You're close, Doug.
Well,
150, we'll accept that. Go ahead.
Whatever it is, I had 400 in mind, but the what they need to do is remove that. If they remove the threshold number and people pay FICA tax on all of their income, it would have a tremendously beneficial effect on the Social Security account.
So, Sandy, why do you think they don't do it?
I think they don't do it for the reason that other people who would call in and talk about money and politics, it ends up that people with more income have more political clout, and they get, you know, I think that if the wealthy didn't have as much political clout, we wouldn't have so many super wealthy people paying 14% of their income as tax, or 12%, or 9%. You know, the fact is that the wealthier you are, the lower the percentage of your income you end up paying in taxes, because you work your way around the taxes, much like the Trump mentioned, only a fool pays taxes if they don't need to. He thought that was a patriotic expression. The fact is that we all ought to be happy, particularly the wealthy, the ones who are benefiting from our society and our economy so much, ought to be happy to pay their fair share of the taxes.
Did we go to Robert from McClare? Let's go to Robert from McClare. Good morning to you, Robert. Thank you very much for listening. You say what?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for having this program. I've been listening to civic media. I wish there was more programming, that followed this format. Lots of good conversation, lots of good points. Couldn't agree more about the FICA, the FICA observations that your guest was just making. And I just hope to see civic media continue to expand. It's great hearing people, who tend to maybe, who have voted for Trump or lean right, call in and hearing their opinions on things. And I just really enjoy the civic media stuff. I think you guys are doing a really great job, and just keep it up. And I hope civic media continues to expand. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Robert, that's a great commercial. Hey, Calvin, you got that? Make sure you bookmark that. But I really do, truly, as I said before, this opportunity that all of us have. A year and a half ago, there was no civic media, and the impact that it's having across the state is a testament, and based on all the callers that we've had today, Sandy, from all over the state, that people are listening.
Well, and I think from my standpoint, I'm interested in toning down partisanship and talking more about policy and hearing people's opinions and listening, because, wisdom is derived from listening, not from talking. And when we all have to do a lot more listening, I think civic media is trying to be a platform for people to listen to one another. And that's the most positive thing we can do.
So I've been struggling with that. My wife of 43 years tells me that every day.
You need to be better at listening.
So you don't have that problem. But anyway, welcome back. 844-967-2789. The phone lines are open. We'll come to you on the other side. It's a Friday edition of the Earl Ingram Show. My co-host Sandy Williams and you.
It's time to get things started on the
Hot Lips.
Yeah, MASH. I knew what that one was. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram. How did you know I would know if you said Hot Lips? What are you implying?
Oh, well, that's the most memorable scene from the show.
Welcome back to the Friday edition of the Earl Ingram Show. That's my coach, Sandy Williams. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. And we've had a very, involved conversation over the last hour or so with listeners who have weighed in on, the differences that we talk about every day with average Americans who are either on one side of the equation, Sandy, or the other, as we lead up to this very impactful and important presidential election. The music that Sandy has chosen and you've been listening to all morning is predicated on what, Sandy?
Well, I tried to pick shows that we all watched together back in the days when we didn't have streaming and we couldn't pick our own everything based on our own individual interests and choice. So we all listened to Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather. We all watched these TV shows together. And it was a unifying thread that I'm afraid is missing now from us societally. And maybe it's a factor in how it is that we feel so different from one another.
All right. With that having been said, 844-967-2789. You can join in the conversation. Let's go to David from Mequon. Good morning to you, David. Your thoughts?
Good morning, Earl. I can't believe what you just texted me, but we'll talk about that in a different time. Really quickly, in regards with the federal debt and what have you, so the current revenue that's brought into the U.S. government is about $4.8 trillion, which is significant. I mean, it's the largest it's ever been. And I've heard, with the idea with Social Security, we should just lift the whole cap on that and what have you. The problem is, if you go again to the U.S. debt clock and you look at the amount of people that are employed today versus 2000, it's like only 700,000 people more. Unfortunately, there's a lot more retirees and there is an older workforce. And so we're going to put more of the burden on younger people with increased taxes and what have you. And I just have to say that the government always cries poor with, we don't have enough revenue. Well, it either does one of two things, either taxes more or borrows money. Those are the two things the government can do. And it's been doing that at a substantial rate, which is way greater than anything, that's been.
You mean borrowing money. You mean borrowing money, not taxing more.
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, yes. Well, but keep in mind, when I say taxing more, you look at, we tax ourselves individually more on a local level with referendums, sales taxes, and other things. And that does eat into your paycheck. And so maybe at the federal level, it did tick down a little bit, but it's certainly been offset with all the other taxes that we pay for everything else. And so we have to remind.
Well, David, when we tax ourselves, we aren't giving the money away. We're investing the money as we choose, like just as you said, locally in referendums. So, for instance, school districts have referendums to support their capital expenditures. People can disagree, but it's a vote. And if the majority prevails, the majority has made a decision about how they want to invest local tax dollars. So I think most people would say that the more local the tax, the more likely it is that the tax reflects the people's desires and the people's priorities. And the fact is that it's at the federal level where we've reduced our taxation, and at the local levels, and some of that local taxation is the result of the federal reduction in taxes because the sharing of federal revenue with the states has diminished.
So let me respond to that, Sandy. So when you say the federal has an increased tax, yes, they have. They've done it by increasing tariffs on all foreign,
Well,
goods
wait.
coming to the United
Well, no,
States.
wait. That tax is a tax on the American public. It's not declared, that was sold to the American public as a tax on the foreign entities on whom the tariff was being levied. But the fact is that when economists and statisticians have looked at it, it ends up that the price of goods has increased, and the tariff is paid primarily by the American public that buys the good, and the tax is not limited just to the tariff products, because the price of the American manufactured products that are now protected by the tariff goes up, and the American public pays a higher price for everything that is subject to the tariff, whether it's manufactured in China or whether it's manufactured in the United States. And so, yes, it's a tax, but it's not sold to the American public as a tax.
But I don't disagree at all what you just said there. All I'm saying is that now we're talking. I know that there's some talk about tripling the tax on Chinese products now. Well, China obviously is our biggest trading partner with goods.
So,
And
David.
Well, actually, David, I mean, I think currently Biden has talked about increasing the tariff on steel, on Chinese-made steel, but it's candidate Trump that's talking about tripling the tariff on Chinese products, putting a preemptive tariff across the board on all Chinese products, and putting 100% tariff on Chinese electric motor vehicles, et cetera. So, yeah, there is talk about it, but most of that talk, I think, is coming from the right.
So David, I think that having this conversation is not what most Americans are saying. They're saying that the revenue needs to come from corporations and the wealthy directly, with having their taxes raised, because under Bush, under Trump, under both Bushes, they cut taxes on the wealthy. And so that has been one of the main reasons that we've accrued the kind of debt that we've accrued in this nation, that they haven't paid their fair share. So we can talk about these other things, these ancillary things, but directly revenue needs to be raised from people who are making truckloads of money and not paying their fair share.
Again, we have 4.8 trillion coming in already. So how much more revenue do you want to raise? Do you want 7 trillion a year?
Whatever
8
it
trillion a year?
takes.
I mean,
whatever it takes.
I mean, but that's what creates. Okay, so when the government keeps borrowing money, which it is,
They don't have to
and I don't
borrow the
think
money,
we
David,
disagree.
if they bring, Sandy keeps saying revenue.
Well, and actually, if you look at the periods of spiking of our national debt, it has spiked periodically when we've carried out substantial foreign military and expensive foreign military adventures and not raised taxes, but lowered taxes. In fact, during the Bush administration, when we were involved substantially in Iraq and Afghanistan, we reduced taxes and increased the deficit materially. We reduced taxes during the Trump period when we were in a boom economy and increased our deficit during a boom economy. And so, the fact is that the absolute number, 4.8 trillion, is a very huge number, but everything's relative. It's relative to the GDP, and it's relative to the expenditures of our budget. It's relative to how we decide to spend our money. And so I'm not sure you and I are so far apart here, except that I think using the number 4.8 trillion as saying we're taxing enough because the number's big is disingenuous.
So let's be honest about this, Sandy. We do know that the military budget is going to swell because of all the munitions that we've been giving to Ukraine, giving to Israel, and now we've got to replace those things because our cupboards are bare. So where are we going to get that? Saying there's going to be less revenue coming in, but the military budget has to be increased.
Well, I think I have to go back and look, but I think the military budget at the turn of the century was about $330 billion. And now it's in the neighborhood of $1 trillion. And the military likes to look at the budget and say, well, for the last 3 years, we haven't kept up with inflation and the increase in the budget. But what they ignore is the ballooning of that budget since the turn of this century. And so, yeah, I mean, the military budget's a huge part of the budget. We can't ignore it when we talk about expenditures and revenue
and deficits.
And so I just think what we need to do as America is get back to the dinner table and have a standard budget discussion about what we can spend based on what we can earn, and we have to talk about what we can earn as well.
Well, and Sandy, the thing is, families have to do that. You're saying that the government's got to do it as well.
Well, politicians have to be more disciplined. We've lacked fiscal discipline in Washington for a long time, and I would argue that part of that lack of fiscal discipline is what has permitted us to wage wars without raising taxes and to reduce taxes in the face of deficits.
Let's go back to Tom from LA. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, first, guys, the taxation of Social Security began with Ronald Reagan in 1983. So anybody that wants to blame Social Security being taxed, there's your guy. Second, I think Gary is a better business person than Trump, and I would actually vote for Gary over Trump. As far as Julie goes, Julie, I was just giving you suggestions to listen to Jane Elliott on the racism and the white privilege that we all have. I'm sorry that you took that as me talking down to you. I did not mean that.
Well, so let's try not to respond to other callers, Tom, because it just leads to people responding back. But you're welcome to, as always, to point out other things. I would just say that the interaction of responding back to what other callers say, we kind of want to cut back on that. But go ahead.
Earl, if someone says my name, I should
know.
have the right to actually be able to
I
say
agree.
back what-
It's why we're gonna do everything we can to try to prevent that. That we stop the back and forth between callers. But Tom,
I think extremes on both sides are not good. But again, I would encourage any Republican to call in and say, and Sandy, you say it's about fear. This fear is real about the social safety net. There's something called Medicare Advantage, which is privatized Medicare and is actually hurting Medicare. So this is not like a dream out there. This is actually something that is happening. The Republicans believe in privatization. The Democrats believe in we the people and believe in more of a public type of situation where we're not making a profit, but it's actually for the public good. There is a difference between these two groups of people. I don't even know who they talk about when they talk about the far left, because I don't know who the far left is. All I want is a strong social safety net. I don't want for government to take over anything. I just want a strong social safety net so child care is taken care of and college is taken care of by we the people. And, those things are, and Medicare or healthcare is taken care of by we the people.
Hey Tom, you know what? No, nobody can argue. I don't think people can argue with what you just articulated. It is the difference between the two sides. Thank you very much for the call, as always. 844-967-2789 is the number. It's Friday. That means Fridays with Sandy Williams and you.
And the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend. Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? All those nights when you've got no lights, the check is in the mail, and your little angel hung the cat up by its tail, and your third fiance didn't show. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came.
All right, what a way to end the show, Sandy.
Cheers.
Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. We just had a great conversation this entire show. Let's go back to the phone lines and Mary from Wauwatosa. Hey, good morning to you, Mary. You don't usually get involved in politics. So,
Good morning, Earl and Sandy.
yes,
However,
ma'am.
I gravitate toward positive and solutions of problems, and the problem I'm hearing and addressing is the never-ending political wrangling. And I'd like to suggest to people who are sincerely, wanting to resolve this and really talk with the other party is to check out braverangels.org. I don't know about the name of this, although, because it sounds like it has religious connotations, but the name it draws from Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address in 1861, where he appealed to the better angels of our nature. And so people who really, really, really want to, talk with the other side and work towards solutions, please check out braverangels.org. It's a national organization. Wisconsin is involved in that. And it's a way forward. If you have any knowledge of this, please let me know. I'll listen off the air. Thank you.
Hey, Mary. You. If we had more Marys in the world, it would be a much nicer world. It's unfortunate that we don't have. Sandy, going back to the theme that you kind of put together for the show, and the show itself, it kind of worked out that way.
Well, it did. My hope was that it would set a tone for people listening to feel, number one, that they were welcome to call, and number two, that it would maybe reduce the stridency of our conversation, and we just get to be talking about things rather than talking about one another. Because I do think that part of the societal norms that we had in the 70s and 60s and 50s was because we were all experiencing a much greater shared experience. We all understood that we were living and doing much the same thing as everyone else. So when we sat in front of the TV, we all knew that we were all watching I Love Lucy. That's what it was. Tuesday night at 8:30, if you're going to watch TV, that's what you watched. And we all watched Ed Sullivan, and we all watched Cheers, and we all watched The Jeffersons, and All in the Family.
Yeah, Dragnet, but Sandy,
Joe Friday.
Yeah, if nothing else, what the show exemplified this morning is that even though there were people on the different sides, they were able to really kind of communicate, right?
Well, I thought we were all respectful. I think the main thing we need is just to be respectful of one another, and not avoid name calling, which we don't always avoid with this kind of conversation. But today we did, and maybe we can set the tone. Maybe this is what we can do.
And I'd also say that what I realized more than anything else were all the different women that chimed in. Normally, when we have a discussion like this, Sandy, it's all men. And we had as many women call in today and weigh in on this political subject as I've ever had, and you and I have ever had. And so we're honored by that. But it does show that women are as engaged in what's happening now as men are.
Maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more.
Maybe more. And, some of the things that are happening in politics have a great deal of impact on women, much more so than it has a theoretical conceptual impact on men and a real impact on women. And I think that lesson and that object is become much more pronounced in today's world.
So you think about it. The conversation did not include abortion. And so a lot of times they tie women into solely that debate, the debate on abortion. But clearly women are concerned because of families, right? And what you've constantly talked about, the family aspect.
I think we're all concerned. I just think that the more people can feel activated and effective in their and they feel like they can have an impact, I think they're more likely to be involved. And I think that women, but the same is true of people who live in the city. Voting there's a worry about people being depressed about the impact of their vote and therefore whether or not they vote. It's something that happened in gerrymandered district. It's also something that might be happening in the cities where people don't feel like their life is impacted sufficiently by their vote. So maybe why vote?
And more than anything else, what today's show represented, Sandy, was the powerful impact that civic media has garnered already. To be able to have people from across the state have a conversation and a dialogue with others from across the state that they would never have a chance to even hear from, does show the power of what civic media has put together and is cultivating and the impact that it's going to have down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wisconsin is the metropolitan area that we're dealing with, and that's a good thing. I think that that if all of Wisconsin begins to identify with one another, and we begin to discuss with one another what we need to do going forward, that's going to be a fantastic outcome.
Yeah. So, look, thank everybody who made the show go. As always, we could not do this without you, the listening audience. Tell somebody else in all those areas. Tell somebody else about us. Tell somebody else about the Earl Ingram Show, and especially the Earl Ingram Show and Sandy Williams on Tuesdays and Fridays. Calvin, thank you. Thank everybody who made the show go. Enjoy a great weekend. Up next, Matt Nair on air.
And go Bucks.
And and Greg Bach. Have a great weekend. Talk to you on Monday.